Hey, my shovel just broke.
Likely excuse. You don't get out of digging that easily.
What am I supposed to do? Dig with my fingers?
You're gonna be digging with your fingers from the other side if you don't help me out here.
Does this sound like your latest grave robbing episodes? Don't get caught short-handed or short-shoveled again. The new Sinister Minutes grave robbing kit provides the quality tools you need to get the job done. There are different options depending on the level of robbing you're planning to do. Just doing a quick smash and grab? The basic kit contains quality shovels, picks, crowbars, and a shuttered lantern with a dirty canvas tarp large enough for the deepest casket. Looking for something more elaborate? We've got all the options, all the way up to directional blasting equipment, stereotaxic locators, gas masks, and electric saws. No grave too big, no grave too small. At Sinister Minutes, we dig them all.
This is so much easier now. My back is gonna be grateful tomorrow.
Agreed. And with what we're stealing from this grave, we can easily afford the next level up. Thank you, Sinister Minute.
Got a minute or two? We have a way to make it not okay. Welcome to Sinister Minutes. I'm your host, writer and storyteller Kurt Homan. Next to me is the master of macabre musical musings, the maestro of mood, Tim Parker. Together, let us take you on a journey into the dark heart of disturbing. Sinister Minutes. It's not okay. Sinister Minutes features tales that include disturbing content. That's intentional because, like the podcast itself, the creators here at Sinister Minutes are really not okay. Now, having said that, realize that content featured on this podcast may include descriptions of some pretty horrific things at times. It is a dark fiction podcast, after all. So we hope that you are anticipating some degree of abuse and blood, of harm and death, of suicide, of sex, of injury, of mutilation, of pain, and certainly some profanity. Maybe a little bit of screaming, occasionally some threats, a bit of torture, a bit of victim blaming. And as always, at some point, we're sure that you're going to encounter some witches. Don't say we didn't warn you. Welcome to Sinister Minute, Season 2, Episode 24. It's time for a trip to the theater. Come on, theater buffs and uncultured louts alike, and let us share with you an adventure filled with playwriting and acting, directing and lights and sound, and, that creepy thing that dwells in the shadows just there by the edge of the stage, waiting for the actor practicing their lines late one night, all by themselves. Or perhaps the one that hangs out in the back row, just waiting for that delightful young couple to arrive and spend their evening making out rather than watching the production. Today's story, Letters to a Recluse Playwright, is about a different sort of theater experience, one that pulls ever so gently at the fragile strings that hold our minds a hair's breadth away from utter insanity. What if the play itself was enough to cause something to happen? If the words spoken upon the stage invoked something dark and ancient? Recluse Playwright comes to us from guest author William Edwin Cherico, a writer and filmmaker from Connecticut. He's been a lifelong fan of the works of H.P. Lovecraft and loves to get scared. He can be found on Instagram, Blue Sky, and his own website. Please check the show notes for specifics. Later, after the story, Tim takes us down a dark and twisty path to show us all something under. As the end of our second season approaches, we here at Sinister Minutes just want to tell you how much we appreciate you all for listening, for supporting us, for sharing Sinister Minutes with everyone you know, for hitting like wherever you listen to us, for subscribing, for submitting your stories, for visiting us at sinisterminutes.com. Tim and I are working on a play of our own, one that will have one of two possible endings. In one, the hero attains the goal and everyone lives happily ever after. In the other, more likely ending, the hero trips on something slippery and nasty smelling and falls into a deep, dark pit where they realize that the writers they selected to tell their tale are most certainly not okay. Letters to a Recluse Playwright by Will Cherico. Narrated by Kurt Homan. July 16th, 1923. Dear Mr. Redford, I hope this letter finds you well. I am the owner of the Gilded Greek Theater in Morningport, Massachusetts, and a long-time producer of many of its shows. I am writing to you today to ask you for the great honor of putting on your most recent play. I understand you've historically been against selling the scripts you've written, but if your stories are as powerful and hypnotic as the plays you directed in your prime, I have no doubt they could be a fantastic entrepreneurial and artistic opportunity. After all, what is a show for if it isn't performed for all to see? The Greek is a small theater, but we could surely work out a deal that would satisfy you monetarily. Please inform me as soon as you've come to a decision. Regards, Edwin Peck. July 7th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, what a pleasant surprise to hear from you after all this time. I suppose when a man becomes as respected and independent as Crawley Redford himself, correspondence becomes one of the many trivialities of life in modern society. My theater and I are saddened to learn of your reluctance to sell us your script. I understand your concern of misfortune. Actors are a very superstitious lot, but I can assure you the Gilded Greek Theater is one of the safest of its size. I would know. I oversaw the construction myself. Just this last year, Roger Ives directed an acclaimed production of Macbeth, in which the fabled curse of the Scottish play took no effect. In truth, this last year was somewhat difficult for us, and by giving us an opportunity to advertise a show with your name attached, you may be saving a small business and several jobs. Please give your writing assistant, or muse, whichever they may prefer, my contact information, and I will attempt to make a case to them as well. Regards, Edwin Peck. July 8th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, I hope you didn't take my comments on the time it took you to respond as an insult. Whether you did or not, I must admire the uncanny speed with which you've answered my most recent letter. you tell me you're hesitant to sell the Gilded Greek your most recent show because of the, quote, potential for risk of life or well-being through enhanced emotions and the ever-blurring lines of reality, unquote, created by the stories of your so-called muse. I understand the fear of not knowing how an audience may react to a show, or even the tragedy of actors becoming lost in their roles, but I can once again remind you of the close eye with which I keep over any production put on at my venue, and assure you that all major events or oddities of the day will be recorded and reported back to you in a letter handwritten by yours truly. Roger Ives just finished directing his vision of Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein, and is looking for a good follow-up. I think one of your works could be the gothic, emotional tour de force that he is looking for. Regards, Edwin Peck. July 9th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, I cannot express to you how delighted I, Mr. Ives, or the rest of the cast and crew of the Gilded Greek Theatre were to see the envelope containing your script for The Eye of Somnirius. While more than one copy of the script would have been preferable, I've explained to everyone that you rented it to us on the condition that we would not read through more than one scene a week, putting us on track for a show between September and November. A strange superstition, to be sure, but I'm willing to entertain the notion that this is to prevent the actors from, quote, emotional overexertion, unquote. Cast and crew alike were willing to accept this without question, except for Nick Andros, a boy who works our light riggings, who agreed after some convincing. We are going to get started as soon as we can, and I will be sure to keep you updated on our progress. Regards, Edwin Peck. July 11th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, as per your request, we read only one scene of your show, and what tease, what suspense! If I were not so inclined to treat your skill with the utmost respect, I would say your one-scene limit is almost cruel. Needless to say, the rest of the workers at the Gilded Greek were equally enraptured, to the point where Nick Andros was ready to lead a crew mutiny to read to the end of the act. Now, naturally, I joke. All of my employees hold nothing but loyalty, and tomorrow we will be rehearsing the next scene of the show. Be sure to thank your Mystery Muse again on our behalf. If all is well with you, I will be stepping away from the letter-writing desk to focus on overseeing the production, but I am sure I will be in touch with you soon. Regards, Edwin Peck. July 15th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, I write to you with uneasy news. Nick Andros, the light boy whose name has graced our discussions more than once, seems to have been possessed with the unexplainable fervor of a religious fanatic. The boy has never had the soul of a creative, opting instead for the more physical art that is stage work. On this day, however, he went on a rather off-putting tangent about the beauty of your work and the stage. Nick was using words to describe your show of a far greater education than I believe he ever received, and to an extent that made rehearsal difficult. We asked the boy to wait outside the theater, and on leaving we saw through the glass door that he had been simply standing and facing the box office, without moving or speaking. When I asked what the boy was doing, he simply muttered, "The eye was so beautiful." What could this mean? Please respond soon. Edwin Peck. July 16th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, I'm writing this in response to your questions about Nick Andros' further behavior. After taking him aside to try to find out more, he admitted to me that he had broken into the Gilded Greek to steal the copy of the Eye of Somnerius so he could finish the play. He had stayed there all night, and upon realizing that people were entering for the next day's work, fled out the window. I have never seen this kind of behavior from the boy before the play began production. I'll be discussing with Roger Ives over what action we will be taking against Nick in the future. He's a fine young man and one of our longest-working crewmates, but to break the rules that were laid out by you so explicitly presents itself as a problem that we don't want to be furthered later. I will follow up after further discussion. Edwin Peck. July 16th, 1924. Dear Mr. Redford, I don't know how you received that letter or sent your response so quickly, but your tone was alarming. What did you mean by referring to the play as an eldritch threat to the boy's life? It's simply paper and ink, isn't it? I've understood your work has garnered controversy among the church for its references to the occult, but I never took that to be anything more than the average stage rumor, being much less superstitious than my creative counterpart Roger Ives. Your letter's warning tone felt more like a threat than anything, and if you have any sinister confessions to make, I strongly suggest you do it soon. Respond with haste. Edwin Peck. July 18th, 1924. Mr. Redford, I don't know if you received my last letter, but it is crucial for you to respond as quickly as possible if you did. Nick Andros' condition has only gotten worse. He wrote a copy of your entire play from memory and convinced other members of the cast and crew to read it. They have begun to act hysterical and obsessive, similar to Nick, weeping, rambling, the like, and are slowly talking the others into reading the script as well. I confiscated his first copy in the morning, but he had a new one by the lunch break. Roger and I aren't sure what to do. The people who have read the full script are still fine at their jobs, but their incessant fervor is distracting the stable actors. Roger, who is currently in a superstitious panic, wants to fire everyone who had read the script, but I don't know if we can afford to do that on such short notice. A theater firing half its cast and crew is not an attractive look to prospective audience or workers, and I would like a second opinion from you or your so-called muse, who, without suggesting blame, has been awfully quiet since this debacle has started. Maybe you should ask them for instructions on where to go from here. I need you to respond as soon as you can. I fear what may be about to happen if I let this get out of control any further than I've already allowed. Edwin Peck. July 26th, 1924. Mr. Redford, I write with awful news. Roger talked me into waiting 1 week for your response before taking the Andros matter into our own hands. I took the boy into my office and told him he would no longer be able to work with us until he had received help and returned to normal. The boy seemed okay with the news until I asked him for his copy of the Eye of Somnerius. The fact that he would no longer be able to spread the word of your Black Bible seemed to affect him all at once. With tears beginning to stream from his eyes, he lunged up and grabbed my fountain pen from across the desk. Before I could react, the boy took the pointed tip and jammed it into his neck, carving a wide slit into his throat with an insidiously savage flourish. Immediately I called for help, and Andros was taken to the hospital, though I fear we were too late. Mr. Redford, I don't know what mystic aberrations you have distilled across your plays, but if this is why you are so hesitant to share your scripts with the world, then I regret ever attempting to convince you to break tradition. Despite my insistence, your responsibility is impossible to write off. What evil muse forces you to write such evil in a medium meant to be distilled to the masses? I gasp as I write this, realizing the other workers, if anything like the boy, are in the process of creating their own copies of your cursed play. Roger is a nervous wreck at the moment, and I have invited him to stay with me at my apartment until this all gets sorted out. I have seen you respond to my letters within the quarter hour, which leads me to think your unresponsiveness is a choice. To what end I do not know. I implore you to help us as soon as you can. Edwin Peck. July 31st, 1924. Mr. Redford, this will likely be the last time that you hear from me. On resuming production of your play, which I dare not mention the name of after the death of the poor Andros boy, an argument ensued between those possessed by the script's power and Ives and I, as well as a handful of concerned actors. A physical altercation ensued between Ives and Maria DeWitt, the female lead of the show. She tried to attack him, accusing him of, quote, attempting to stifle the beauty of the eye, unquote. Ives, in panicked self-defense, pushed her back and grabbed at her script. Tugging at the woman's tight grip, he tore the pages in two, and like several clocks striking the witching hour at once, all of those gripped by the eye cried out in shock and what almost sounded like pain. On seeing her papers destroyed, Maria screamed and, with no warning, ceased to function. Doctors, who would later inspect her, declared they had no idea what had happened to her. She simply stopped living. In this time, one of our stagehands had the wise thought to telephone the police, while Ives and two players engaged the other four in your creation's clutches. When the police arrived, they were able to subdue three of them, but the fourth escaped. Roger and I are currently investigating the Gilded Greek to see if we can find his dropped script. Whether we do or do not, we have agreed the only way to contain this awful curse is to burn the building to the ground and catch a bus for Connecticut. I urge you, for no sum of money, to ever lend one of your muse's awful conjurings to the mind of another reader again. I don't know what keeps you safe from its ramblings, but it is far too strong for the average man. I also encourage you to maintain safety precautions from the fourth possessed, who is still out there and knows who you are. His experience in stage work has made him strong, and I fear what may happen to you if he decides he needs to get his hands on more of your work. Good luck, goodbye, and I am sorry for the trouble caused. Edwin Peck. Something Under, composed and performed by Tim Parker. Sinister Minutes is presented by Kurt Homan and Tim Parker. The musical score was composed and performed by Tim Parker. Our production team consists of Kurt Homan and Tim Parker. On behalf of everyone here at the Sinister Minutes podcast, namely Kurt Homan and Tim Parker, we thank you for listening, for joining us as we explore all the ways in which we are not okay. This audio program is copyright by Kurt Homan and Tim Parker under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.